Hi, Eitan Shalom here. A very brief comment about working with emotions through mindfulness practice, mindfulness meditation. So, all Buddhist meditation begins with mindfulness of the in and out breath. So, just sit comfortably, pay attention to your breath sensations, and allow that to settle you down. Take a moment and have a sense of your entire being, your body, but also your nervous system and your mental emotional state. Just have a sense of that in this moment in space and time. And you can do that by paying attention to your bodily sensations, the feedback you have through your sensory nervous system from all of your skin and muscles and everything in your body, your heartbeat, everything. And at the same time, be mindful of your in and out breath, and that will immediately calm you. And as you're doing that, you will notice if you have some important emotional issue going on, or even if you don't, but something just will arise out of your subconscious, out of your nervous system, because the mind and the nervous system are inextricably linked. They're one and the same thing on a certain level, in that everything that you feel and think has an immediate cascade of biochemical and nervous system reactions in the body through the endocrine system, through the neurotransmitters, and through your nervous system itself. And say, I guess it's noisy here, but I'm in the shade. So say that you're sitting and then you start thinking about something, and I think we find that often when we have an anger or fear about something that's not immediate, it's not right in front of you. In other words, it's not like somebody just stepped up and yelled at you and then you react without thinking. But now, a week later, you're thinking about that event and you're getting stirred up. And stirred up is exactly the right term. And notice that in English we have terms, I'm going to move away from this noisy thing, that in English we have terms that echo actually Chinese medicine way of viewing the body and Ayurvedic medicine way of viewing the body-mind, in that when you're angry, that causes the liver cheese to rise up to the head. Nice kafia. And so to rise up to the head, and that's what we mean when we talk about stirring up. And what stirs up in nature is fire. So just keep that in the back of your head, that the feelings that anger stimulate and frustration and all of that are really in the human microcosm, a microcosmic version of what happens with fire in nature. So anyway, you're thinking of, I'm going to go under my favorite tree. It's an Algerian pine. And these grow outside the city of Jerusalem. And so this smell reminds me of my childhood. Anyway, you're sitting and you're thinking about something. And this doesn't have to be just when you meditate. It could also be when you are driving your car or anything. And you are lost in a thought, and the words in the thought are words that are about anger or fear. Something that happened with someone, you're replaying the dialogue, or in the case of fear, it can be more subtle. You're thinking about the future, or you're replaying a dialogue with somebody in which you were angry, but you start to get in touch with the fact that underneath the anger is actually fear, because you're afraid maybe of losing the relationship, for example. Maybe you've lost other relationships in the past because of some kind of behavior, anything like that. So I thought I only had 3 minutes left, but I was wrong. So let me be take a little more time with that. So you're lost in a thought. The moment that you become conscious of a physical and or emotional sensation associated with the thought. And by doing this, you'll start to train yourself to get to what the root of what's driving thoughts rather than get lost in thoughts. And that's the key point. The whole idea here is to see that thinking is just a thing. Thinking is just thinking. It's not good. It's not bad. It's like a computer program that's ultimately X's and O's. Thinking is just neurotransmitters. So what does thinking do? It creates actions. It also creates nervous system states. And it also creates nervous system states. And so by noticing the feeling that we usually have a word for, because, feelings, though they're inchoate and they are actually experienced in the body, they're not experienced in the abstract. You don't feel anger in your brain. You feel it in your body. You feel tense. You feel hot. You feel your blood pressure go up. There's physical sensations. You don't feel fear in your brain. You feel it in your body. You feel a kind of inchoate sense of nervousness and movement in your skin and in your in your limbs, and you can't sit still, and you lie down to go to sleep, and you toss and turn, and your mind won't stop, right? Or you feel like running, and your legs tremble. Depending on how acute the experience of fear is, how immediate it is. When I was hiking in the Grand Canyon and there was a rattlesnake, I heard it, I saw it and heard it simultaneously, and I jumped backwards 7 feet. I didn't think about that. My body just did that. That was adrenaline. And Chinese medicine says fear makes the qi rush downward. And that's why fear is often associated, and by fear, we call it anxiety, but anxiety is fear. That's the emotion of fear, is often manifested as downward rushing in the body with certain disorders like some chronic diarrhea where there's no infectious element, and also interstitial cystitis where there's a chronic downward movement in the bladder, but there's not actually a need to urinate, and it involves irritation rather than infection. So your meditation, I like to explain. So now you're coming back to your sitting, and you're mindful of the in and out breath, and you start getting lost in a dialogue about something that happened with someone, and you're telling them off in your head. And the moment you realize that you're doing that, and you become aware that there's thinking going on, you can drop in and notice what you're feeling. You can note thinking if you want. You may not need to once you've been doing it for a while, because what you'll do is you'll immediately notice anger. If it's really hot, you might notice rage. If it's mild, you might notice irritable. Let's say you're annoyed at your teenage boy and you're not really enraged. You're just annoyed at some stupid thing that he's doing because he's a teenage boy. And then you note anger. Let's just stick to anger. You note anger, and you immediately start to pay attention to the physical sensations that you're feeling that let you know that you're angry. And by doing this, someday when you're in a discussion with a friend and it's getting overheated, instead of losing your temper, you'll notice your body sensations, and you might be able to say, you know what, I'm feeling too angry right now, and I don't want to lose control, so let's agree to stop talking about this right now. I'm just giving an example. And so in the meditation, you note anger, you note that because you noticed your physical sensations of tension, of heat, of even the desire to lash out, which has a physical corollary to it, because we lash out physically typically with our hands, but also with our mouth, with our tongue. And so at that moment, you're also very mindful of the in and out breath. And at that moment, you'll usually find that you're carried away, that you're actually not in control. You've noticed this roller coaster of emotion in your meditation that's happening in your mind, and there's no one there to fight with, but the out of control bit is just inside you. And the same holds true with fear. The same holds true with overwhelming grief. The same holds true with if you're madly in love and why do we use words like crazy when someone's in love? Madly in love, because you lose control. It's what Chinese medicine calls excessive joy. You would think one couldn't have excessive joy, but the excessive joy makes you do stupid things. There's a famous jazz song. Is it jazz or pop? Anyway, the line goes da 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 da. Something about saying something stupid like "I love you." Like we'll say that prematurely in this society, and so any emotion can be pathological when it's excessive, and it can be really pathological if it's a long-standing thing, which is usually what you find with anger and fear. And you can find that with grief when someone's overwhelmingly distraught and they're not able to process it. Sometimes they don't process it because they don't face it. They don't allow themselves to sit with it in the first place. Through, in part, a lot of societies have really wonderful grieving rituals that help you process grief. We sort of don't have that in this society nearly as much. People are pressured to go back to work right away, et cetera, et cetera. People use all kinds of rationalizations, like my friend who was grieving the loss of her grandmother, and her brother, said to her, why are you sad? She had a good life and she'll be reincarnated. And it's like, that's really not the point. Her brother's somebody who doesn't let himself feel his emotions. Yeah, she had a good life. Yeah, if you believe in reincarnation, she's coming back, as a watermelon. Sorry, she's coming back, but you're still sad. It's your grandmother, and it's a loss. It's okay to grieve loss. But what happens is when you don't grieve loss, or if the loss triggers a much greater, deeper grief that you haven't faced, then, you can become depressed. And 6 months later, you're as sad as you were the day your mother died, or the day that you found out that you were getting divorced. And then that becomes pathological. And grief, think about the word that we use a lot for grief. We say someone's depressed. Well, what is a depression? In the physical world, a depression is a lower spot. We will also say, I feel low. A depression is a lower spot in the road where when it rains, water collects and the water doesn't move. It just sits. It stagnates. And indeed, when we're grief-stricken, we often don't get out of bed. When we're depressed, we don't get out of bed. We just sit in the chair all day. And one of the strategies with depression, by the way, is to force yourself to walk a little bit, to go out and move, to keep the energy moving. So every single emotion can be dealt with through mindfulness practice. And getting back to the beginning, you notice the physical sensations in your body. So you're grief-stricken, you're horrifically grief-stricken, and you can't move, and